forward. But instead, what we did, we rolled back to sort of before the Bitcoin point, the Bitcoin singularity, if you will, and figured out, oh, we actually need to do something else in order to solve this problem. And in order for me to explain why Holochain is different, I need to explain what Bitcoin actually did, and then how we're doing some of those same things, but in a very different way. So for the people who are watching, this might be a different story that you've never heard about Bitcoin before. So listen very closely. So Bitcoin solved the problem of what I call distributed intrinsic data integrity. As in, how do you have a bunch of data live out in the open among many different computers without any one of those computers being able to fuck with it after the fact, right? Mm-hmm. That's what Bitcoin does. But it did this not by really doing a massive innovation in computer science, because actually similar types of algorithms and technologies like blockchain's proof of work consensus, as well as the hash chain sort of chaining of blocks to each other, or rather entries to each other, was already around for quite some time. GitHub uses the hash chain approach, blockchains that sort of take that and then bashed updates to it. All of those were already around. But the thing that was the genius about Bitcoin was that it found an economic or a game theoretical solution to assuring that integrity.
Right.
And so it found a way to make it economically prohibitive or expensive enough that an attack would be too costly for an attacker to execute. And so it achieved this consensus and this integrity of data by requiring everybody to update the chain, or like on their own devices, as new blocks get added. And so to have the most up-to-date version available in order for them to participate. And so this is the genius of Bitcoin. And this is also why it has commanded such a strong following, and why there is such a term as Bitcoin maximalist, because it was sort of the singularity point of, whoa, we couldn't do this before, now we can. What the fuck? Like, what do we do with this now? And like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so at the beginning of Bitcoin, actually, what people don't often forget now is Bitcoin had a real political project. Like, it was not just some technology that some nerds were playing around with for fun, but it was actually designed to be the sort of the spear in the heart of the legacy financial system, and to deprive states of the capacity to basically inflate the money supply and tax us through another means.
Well, so it's interesting you say that, because, you know, there are countries that have already switched over to other currencies. So if you look back at, let's say, the US dollar as an example, Panama was the first country to adopt the USD years ago, and other countries like Ecuador have followed suit. So they have there's sort of a duality here, right? One is, it's sometimes easier not to try to dictate your own monetary policy with your own currency, because it really requires a lot of effort, and that's what a lot of ICOs are trying to do. And on the other hand, you're relegating control of your own currency by adopting someone else's currency, but you follow the rules that that currency defines, or that other country defines to some extent or degree. So in some respects, we could argue that Dash has kind of been adopted by Venezuela now to a large degree as a currency, although it's not official, but it's very widely used. And we've seen other countries like Belarus that have said, we're not going to tax anybody for 5 years, and countries like Japan that are widely accepting Bitcoin. It won't be long before some of the countries that are, let's say, less economically stable switch to Bitcoin and end up becoming very wealthy just because they switch their economy to Bitcoin during a bottom. I mean, if a country like the Gambia were to switch over to Bitcoin and dump their local currency, can you imagine what wealth they might create just by switching everything over? It'd be insane. So I don't think we're that far away from it happening. I think it's just a matter of time before we're going to see that next transition over in terms of adoption, the same way that people have adopted other currencies into their own country.
I think it's very possible, yes. I mean, I just saw this article yesterday or today about this city that is intended to basically only accept Bitcoin and be this massive tourist attraction of 3 million people a year, basically, yeah, being a Bitcoin city. So we're already
Which city with this?
I think it's in Malaysia somewhere. I don't quite.
In Malacca. It's an 835 acre island, but it's not actually Bitcoin. It's going to accept only their own currency.
Okay, interesting. Maybe there are different articles, but there's definitely something in the air that people who are planning projects of that scale, that actual massive scale, are deciding to go with a different technology than sort of fiat. So that's quite something for sure.
Yeah, they're creating their entire island that they're building around is going to be all crypto driven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we can do a fact check on that. I'm pretty sure that they said they would actually use their own currency, but they may well accept Bitcoin at the beginning. But I think the plan was just to only accept their own at the end. But yeah, either way, the point is quite clear. It's they're experimenting now with a lot of land.
Right. And I think we also have to give a bit of nuance. Like lots of these kind of projects, not necessarily this one, but lots of these projects use this to generate attention. That's just the world we live in. So you always have to do your own research, but it definitely says something about that this kind of thing is generating attention because people are realizing, okay, this is something that gets people's heads into the game and like their hearts even. And if we do this, if we announce this, we will get massive attention. We will get lots of support. So it's quite something. Like Bitcoin is really not just or not even primarily a technological innovation, but it's also like a very strange sort of memeplex, if you will, like a whole thing that anchors in people's minds, like infects them and then turns them into sort of these people that are then going out and infecting more minds. Like this is not something that's exclusive to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is really good at this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So wait, so Steve, I fact checked it, and you are correct. They will make you. It's not a Bitcoin city or crypto city, but you have to, when you get there, you have to change what they're calling normal money into the local DMI coin to pay for anything.
Wow.
And this article came out yesterday or no, last week.
Yeah, it was out last week, about 6 or 7 days ago. Yeah.
Yes, they're calling it the world's first Bitcoin city, Bitcoin in quotes, even though technically you have to, cash is banned, but you have to go into their own currency.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Amazing. Yeah. But so like we get a good sense now where Bitcoin is at its 10-year anniversary, which is where we are right now. But to really understand how it got here, you have to understand how magnificent of an idea it really was to create this sort of workaround solution to this very hard computer science problem of DIDI, or distributed intrinsic data integrity, which is, by the way, a mouthful, but I'll try not to use it. But so now that you understand sort of what Bitcoin did, now I can explain to you why Holochain also solves that problem, but does it differently. And so if you think sort of back to before Bitcoin, Holochain also figured out that distributed intrinsic data integrity, how do we have this bunch of data live out on many different servers with nobody being able to tamper with it after the fact? It figured out that in order to solve that, you need to, and to approach it not just from an economic perspective, you need to have computer science innovation. And so in the sense that I've started thinking about this, I believe that Holochain solved this problem from the actual computer science dimension in a sense. And so the way we did this, or the way that they did this, I wasn't part of the team back then, was to basically combine very proven existing technologies into a magical mashup in a sense. And so the technologies that we combined were hash chains, which everybody in blockchain should know, which is basically the same thing as blockchain, except that blockchain batches updates rather than committing every single entry to the chain.
Right.
And then, which is also a technology that GitHub uses, and Git, to keep track of code changes. So it is a proven technology and has existed for decades. And so you can pretty much rely on this working. And this is something else that you need to keep in mind whenever you evaluate the technology is, if it's experimental, like, yes, let them prove that it works. But if they use something that has already been around for a while, you can probably trust it much more than this other sort of experimental stuff.
Right.
And so the other part of the game is distributed hash tables, DHTs. And these have also been around for quite some time. If you've ever downloaded, perhaps illegally, an album or a movie or whatever other digital file that you can copy and consume, then you have probably used a distributed hash table. And what you do when you go to Pirate Bay or whatever other platform that you use to find your magnet links, you go there, you search for the file that you want, the file name, you find a magnet link, which is like a mini file, basically just a pointer. And then with that pointer, you can open it in your torrent app. And then with that app, what that does, it takes that pointer and it looks up other computers in a network that also have this DHT sort of thing that's going on, and finds whoever else has that same file on their device, and then allows you to create a direct connection between your computer and their computers, and then to stream their file to you in mini bytes, pieces to your device in a very quick fashion. And that's the way that you receive the file, and then it sort of assembles it on your device. And that's how distributed hash tables work. And basically what distributed hash tables do, so to just explain it a bit more, they're basically a universal file system that doesn't rely on any particular computer being online. Because what it was designed to do was to create a distributed net that cannot be like cut at the root or cut at the center, which is what all the states do when they find something that's illegal or not to their liking. They go to the root, they cut the root, and then everything else dies. And so the point of DHTs was to create a folder structure, a file system, just like on your desktop with files, but that isn't dependent on the computer that it lives on.
Right.
And then to have you be able to find other people and then like stream it, and then like you can stream it to other people, and then if one gets taken down, everybody else can still do what they're doing. And so now it's just a fact of life that you can do this. And this is also why, of course, all kinds of criminal organizations use this for sharing all kinds of other data, or also, like, I don't know, other illicit material, porn, whatever it may be. But also, of course, books, for example. So I actually like to search for book torrents and then download books that I would otherwise be unable to get or have to pay lots of money for. So
right.
This is,
but we didn't say that. But we didn't say that on the show, though.
Well,
we didn't say that, right?
Yes, you guys didn't. But I've actually been found out by the German legal system and had to pay twice something for my acts. So, but yeah. Anyways, now I'm much more careful.
Great. Rather than dissuade you, you've just kind of upped your efforts.
Right.
That's right.
VPN.
He's going to be anonymous on the next episode, Yuri. He's going to have like a with a hoodie.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be called Moritz Satoshi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, so those two technologies are sort of the main core pieces of Holochain, and I'll tell you how they connect to in a second. And then we add some more magic, basically. Well, we add validation rules, which basically means if you do something in an app, it checks whether what you're doing conforms to the rules of the application. And then we also add app code, which basically just specifies what the app can do and how it's structured and all that typical sort of database management stuff. And so once you then download a HAP, which could be a DMG if you're on Mac or whatever other executable or whatever, and you install it on your device, what happens is the following. The HAP gets installed, and as the very first act that it does, that is even independent of you doing something, is it takes the app code, the entire app code, and hashes that app code to the Genesis entry of a local hash chain that is just your hash chain.
Just on your PC, you're creating your own blockchain on your own laptop and generating a Genesis block right there the minute you've installed it. So
and
every time someone installs that app, you've got multiple PCs installing multiple versions of the same app, but creating an independent blockchain with an independent Genesis block on that chain.
Yes, I'll be precise and say hash chain, but yes, blockchain is fine. And so, so this is, but notice what I said, hash the app code as the Genesis entry. And this is really important because it means you've basically now specified the rule set by which you're operating in this Holochain app. And then what happens when you then do anything in the app, every single entry in your hash chain gets checked against the rules. And if the rules say, no, you can't do this, then it doesn't even like propagate on your own device. It can't even get added to your own hash chain.
Right.
Of course, if you're a hacker, like you can try to fudge with that, but there are different ways that we solve